Hello, this is Anne. I'm just back with you to run through an error that I noticed in task number 2 of our revision questions. So this is on page 11, as you'll see, and we'd made our way through the first part A here. All of this is fine. Finding the total cost of a unit based on producing 7,500 units, absorbing based on number of units produced, all that's good. In part B, the first 3 parts are all absolutely fine. The current method of overhead absorption, if you remember, we looked at that here, was that we were taking an overhead of £300,000 and we were sharing it over 7,500 units. So we did that. So the current method is based on the number of units. That gave us an overhead of £40 per unit. And that would actually entered into our answer here. All that's correct. An appropriate basis we said would be labour hours, because that was the only other information provided in the question. We know how many hours are worked in order to produce those 7,500 units. So labour hours are a good alternative, meaning the overheads would be divided by 4,500. And of course, if we do that, OAR divided is their overhead divided by the activity. So it gives us a rate of £66.67, but that is 66.67 per labour hour. So this is the bit where the error is. Because the question said this would result in the overhead cost per unit increasing. So when it means per unit, it means per unit of the single product, not per unit of measurement. And there's a very similar question to this in the AAT assessment, which is how I've picked the error up. So when it talks about a unit, it means a unit of product. It doesn't mean a unit in this case is £40 for one complete unit, and then the unit here is a labour hour. It's talking about a unit of our finished product. So the question actually means this would result in the overhead cost of a unit of production. And then the options are increasing, decreasing, or staying the same. So we just need to be a little bit more careful now about how we answer that, because what we would need to recognise is that we have an overhead of £300,000. We know that. 4,500 labour hours, we know that we're going to actually absorb £66.67 for each labour hour spent on this product. So the next question then is, how many hours do I spend making a product? How many hours do I spend making one unit? I want to know the labour hours per unit. So let's have a think about that. I want to know the labour hours per unit, because if it only takes half an hour, I would only give it half of that cost. So remember, I talk about that per sign as being like a division. So the number of labour hours is 4,500. We know that because we worked it in the formula here. The number of units produced is 7,500, which we worked with earlier. So 4,500 hours shared over 7,500 units gives me 0.6 of an hour. So that's very interesting. So that means that I don't actually spend a whole hour making this product. I only spend 0.6 of an hour. So it's not fair to give it a full £66.67 of overhead, because it's not, the unit isn't in the department for a whole hour. So I give it 0.6 of an hour instead. And then guess what? That comes out at an overhead amount of £40 for the unit, which means that the unit cost actually stays the same. So rather than increasing, that should stays the same. And that is a very, very similar question to one of the AAT sample assessment questions. It's in sample assessment number 1, if you'd like to take a look at that, just to get a bit of extra practice on that very last part. Okay, so I hope that's helpful as a clarification to that particular part of the task.